Ama anataka kuongeleshwa. Yes.
Alafu vile nini alafu vile ulifika hapa hivi. Did you meet anyone at reception?
Oh yes.
And then
tukaanza kupiga story.
Mkaanza kupiga story.
Yes.
Exactly. The world is made of stories because as human beings, we are storytellers. The difference between you and a cow or a goat is that a goat can tell stories. But as human beings, we are actually storytellers. And sometimes, when I say that all human beings are storytellers, people say, Miss Bigangi story, me I work with computers or I do this. But I tell them that all of us, in one way or another, the only difference between you and, actually you're a storyteller because you're here with us. Well. But the difference between someone who is working even with machines and me is maybe because I make a living through telling stories. Yes. But when you leave home in the morning and then you have your whole day's work, you go home and you meet whoever is at home. You know, a partner, your children, your family, a neighbor. Anakuuliza, na by the way umeshinda aje? Naomba hata usiulize. Lesson nilichelewa kuamka. So kujitayarisha haraka haraka. Shati nilikuwa napanga kuvaa. KPLC wakanua stima. So ilibidi nende na crisis. Na nilikuwa na meeting na mdosi. Acha nishuke barabara pale kwa mat. Unajua kulinyesha jana usiku. Mat ingine hapo tumwenda ikanimwagilia maji. Kiatu ndio hiyo. Nakwambia nilifika hivi nimehema. Kuingia hivi nafikiri mdosi hayuko. Akapo ameningoja. Aliniangalia na macho mbaya. But anyway, haikuwa mbaya sana. And at lunch time, beshte yangu akakuja akaniambia, "Acha nikubaie lunch." So it has been an okay day. What are you doing?
You're telling a story.
You're telling a story.
Giving an account of how your day was.
Exactly, and you're telling a story. So what makes us different as human beings is that we tell stories, and what makes us live together very well and in agreement is that I know your story, you know my story, I know why you behave the way you behave or do things the way you do. And I believe that if I know your story and you know my story, we can disagree. And I just say, me, I don't really believe in what you're doing. I don't think it is right, but I know where you're coming from. And we can agree to disagree and still live in peace.
Yeah. Who gets to decide which stories to be told and which stories to remain in history?
The storytellers. Maybe that's why I am one. Because it is the storytellers in the different formats, whether they are oral storytellers like I am, whether it is broadcasters and the media like you, whether it is now we have social media influencers, it is the storytellers. And it is also one of the reasons why I always tell people, please tell your story. You, whoever you are as an individual, you have a story. But unless you tell that story in whichever way you can, in whichever medium you can, we will never know that version of the story. Because we know that everything that happens is a story, but the version that is told and is heard, it depends on who is telling it. So that is why all of us should be storytellers.
And also, you know, when you look at the African society, through stories, that is how knowledge was passed down, that is how knowledge was preserved, passed orally before books arrived. Do you think as a modern society today, we still respect oral knowledge? Ama mambo ya literacy has unfairly treated this aspect of storytelling?
I think we still do. Because otherwise I won't have a career. This year I'm actually celebrating 20 years in performance. And for me to be in the industry for this long, it means that there is actually something. So what has happened is that the storytelling has shifted from around the fireplace into different spaces. It has gone to conference rooms, it has gone to screens, it has gone to the internet, it has gone to the classroom, it has just taken wings and even gone to main theater stages in Kenya and around the world. So what has changed is where the stories are told, how they are told, and also I remember when I was starting out years ago, and I went somewhere and somebody, hey, you to a school and said, you know, I actually tell stories and this is what I'm doing for a living. And the owner of the school was like, hey, actually what you are saying sounds very interesting, but you want me to pay you to come and tell my learner stories. So, and I believe, I mean, the person was probably for the older generation where storytelling happens, it is very informal, it is free. So there's still that mentality, but I think things have really, really shifted. What I can see over the years is that one, the spaces have shifted, but also the demands around it. You don't just show up and tell a story. Okay, so this is what we want to achieve. How will your story help us achieve it's a curriculum outcome, or it is in a conference, or it is in a workshop? Is that can you align your stories and your storytelling to meet this particular need.
And actually, when you deal with kids, when you're telling stories, is there an aspect of paying attention that is enhanced from your work as a storyteller?
Oh, yes, it is. One of the things that I have had complaints from teachers, from parents, and me being a parent myself, is that the children's concentration span imekuwa ndogo hivi. And also with television and the screen online, it has not helped because there's a lot of distractions. So actually, a lot of times, families that come to my storytelling session say, I want to build the concentration span of my child.
Yes.
This child cannot focus on one thing that is not a screen for 5 or 10 minutes. What can we do? And I always say, you bring them to my session, then we will start from there. But that's something else also with younger children. It's also about vocabulary. Because we realize that your vocabulary is only as wide as what you are exposed to.
Yeah.
So the more words that you're exposed to, the wider it is. And this also like really helps with younger children, but also expressing yourself. I love working with children, especially the younger ones, because it is very playful. And I usually say in my session, there are no wrong answers. So I'll ask, what do you think about this? What do you think the character should have done? What do you think we should do at this particular point? You know? And the child would probably stand up and express themselves. And I say, you know what? If you feel there's a song in the story and you want to jig around, please.
It actually stimulates their minds.
Exactly. Stand up. So what storytelling does is that it is wholesome. It's not just for your mind. It's also for your body. It's also about your creative thinking. It's also about your the way you express yourself. So that is why it's a very wholesome kind of activity.
Yes. You know, as millennials, as we were growing up, we used to be told stories of giants and man-eating giants by our grandmothers back in the day. I see you've done some work on children. Forever Tree, there's Jasiri Ameenda Wapi, and also The Newcomer and other stories. What inspires you to write for kids?
One, because I grew up as a reader myself. I did have the same luxury as you of having a grandmother telling stories. And I think also nowadays the grandmothers are becoming younger and busier.
Well, yeah.
Even when they retire, do they really retire? Nowadays you're getting grandmothers, they're everywhere. They're flying everywhere, they're doing everything. So, but I grew up reading a lot. And I read a lot of Western books. So Heidi, Cinderella, Snow White, Enid Blyton, Famous Five, Hardy Boys, and I really loved it. So when I got into art, into theater, by the way, my very first shows that I did that I aired on TV were actually here in KBC. So KBC holds a very special place in my heart.
Also interacted with our Big Minds program.
Oh, yes, I'm actually the storyteller on Big Minds.
Yes, how was that, by the way?
Yes, but anyway, to go back to the writing aspect. I tell people that before I became a parent, I was a professional aunt. I come very, very low here in my family, and we're a very big family. So by the time I was in my early 20s, I had like 15, 20 nieces and nephews. And I wanted them to read. But also I thought, okay, what about they read things that they can actually relate with? Because even as much as my work has allowed me to travel around the world, to Europe, to different places, even now I've never seen snow. And yet when I would write my compositions at school, how I spent my holidays, hey,
you can paint that.
Hey, I was ice skating, I was playing with snow, and I thought, okay, well, I got good marks. But, you know, I believe there are really amazing stories about our childhoods, about the children that we are growing up with, that can be told in a way that is relatable. That's why I write. And because also as a storyteller, I can't be everywhere. So my books will go where I cannot reach.
And you've said that your work is extensive. You have experience and as a performing storyteller for diverse audiences, and you have done that across multiple cultures and artistic space. And you have gone beyond the borders of Kenya, beyond the continent of Africa. how has your reception been in places that are away from the African contemporary society, where we're used to storytelling from our old, younger age, now to new societies where you're interacting with people from other places of the world?
Oh, it has been great. It has been great. One thing that is very special about African storytelling is that it is not just sit down, tell a story. In fact, sometimes when I've been in Europe, the comment has been, Wangari, you're not a storyteller. What you're doing is not storytelling, it is story theater.
Yes.
Because unlike in some societies where telling a story is you stand there, tell your story and it's over, is that African storytelling involves a lot of elements. It has music, it has movement, it has very key engagement with the audience, and that is actually what makes it special. So African storytellers who are using the elements of African storytelling, out there we get really good reception. And I remember a few years ago I was doing a project that required me to travel to Germany, and my colleague said, Wangari, I know how you tell stories, but you should know German audiences. They don't sing.
What?
And I said, okay, like, you know, they're very appreciative, but they'll come there, they'll listen, and they'll feel good and they'll clap. You start telling them to engage, that's something different. And I remember we did the show for quite a while, and first thing I would actually say, I have heard that you guys don't do this. So let me try it out. And that was always an icebreaker. And they would laugh, and then they would actually sing and engage, and they would do the whole interaction. So don't be afraid to experiment. Yes.
Because, you know, I was reading about you, and your stories, the way you tell stories, it's like they breathe through song, dance, and chance, playful audience interaction. How do you transform that performance into an intimate storytelling moment for your audience?
The first thing that I do in places where I act is I will say, how do I want my audience to sit? Because also the seating formation also really speaks into how the show is going to be. So like in African traditional societies, there's a lot of stories are told around the fireplace. It's because you're there, the focus is there, the energy is there. There's a reason why you didn't go to the public square and you're saying, kila mtu akae mahali anataka kukaa, as long as you can see me. So one is the seating arrangement. I usually say it's supposed to be very informal. Feel free. This is a safe space. Nobody is here to look at, hey, you are sitting with your mouth wide open. So you sit around and make sure that everybody feels seen, everybody feels that they're part of this. And sometimes I even joke and say, don't think that you came here to sit and listen, because you might end up doing actually more work than I did. And also is to create an environment where people actually feel they can actually engage with you. So it's very warm as well. It's very warm, and you invite them into the story so they feel that they're not just coming there to look at you. Because unlike a play, you know, with the play when you go to the theater, is the play happens here, you are there, you either laugh and you finish, you clap, you go. But with storytelling, it's different. It's like, this is our show. So how do you want us to work on this?
Yes. Very interesting. You know, the African story has sometimes been told by outsiders, and we also hear that Africa needs to start telling its own stories. What do you think? How dangerous is it when a continent loses control of its own narrative?
Oh, it is very dangerous. And I think we have all heard about Chimamanda's story about the danger of a single story. And let me tell you the danger of a single story from my perspective. About 10 years ago, I was privileged to go to a storytelling festival in Iran. And from about 11 storytellers from around the world, I was the only African. And the very first press interview I did, the question was, so Wangari, you say that you come from Kenya, and we've just recently seen on CNN that Nairobi is the hotbed of terrorism. How do you guys survive there? And I laughed. Because I told them, you know, when I told my family I was coming to Iran, they told me, are you crazy? Like, do you know where Iran is? Do you know who its neighbors are? That place rains bombs. you know?
Yes.
And I told them, and they just laughed and said, okay, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and it's also maybe one of the reasons I tell stories and I love traveling around, telling stories, is because you also go and pick different things. So, of course, the first thing was shocked, like they actually think Kenya is the way it is. And I was saying, I've lived in Nairobi for almost 20 years. I've never even been robbed of my phone.
Yeah.
Okay, about 2 years later, my phone would get snatched through a city hopper. But still, you know, it's something very different. But also, I also have to say that part of the things that I have learned in my storytelling and being in different spaces has also been about the stereotypes that I hold as a person. So for instance, when I was Googling about Iran, was like, it's an Islamic country, the women are very oppressed. Then I go to Tehran and the festival, like 60% of the guys who are organizing are actually women.
Yeah.
They look like they're very educated, you know, you're talking to them, and I'm like, okay, I'm seeing them driving, because me, I thought, you know, they don't even drive. And I thought, okay, Wangari, you also have your own stereotypes.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing that whenever you go around everywhere, you're also aware of that. That it's not just about what stereotype do they have of me, what may I have also of them. And I think listening to the stories from the storytellers in different places, but also, you know, relating with them, also helps you understand the world in a much better way.
There's that aspect of breaking stereotype. You know, we are living in the age of social media, and also, as you had said, shrinking attention spans, especially for kids. What do you think? Is storytelling evolving, or is there a chance or a danger of losing the patience required for deep stories?
That is the reason why we need to have as much diversity in storytelling, as much diversity in the media we are using, and also the storytellers who are telling the stories. I believe there is a space for a 1-2 minute social media story. I believe you can also communicate some things in 30 seconds, 90 seconds. But a lot of times, when you do that, you lose one, like you're saying, the depth, and a lot of times also context. Because if I only have 1 minute, I am assuming that you have also done your background research on what is the context of what I'm discussing about. And we know ourselves as human beings. A lot of times, we have not done this. So I believe there is space for everything. There is space for everything, and we should not say, oh, this is better than this, because it all depends on that context. But also, is that whether you're telling me a 90-second story, or you're telling me a 40-minute legend or a myth, just make it in a way that I am actually glued to be there. Because I tell some stories that are 40 minutes long. I also tell 5 and 10 minute stories. So just give your listener or your reader, if you're writing, a reason to stick with you, whether it is those 5 minutes or 15 stories. But I believe that away from social media, we need to go back to these other formats of storytelling that are a bit longer, because it is affecting everywhere across board. It's affecting our classroom. It's affecting our research, because nowadays, why would I go and read a whole book and yet I know I can just Google and get exactly the point that I'm looking at? And I believe there's beauty in just like taking a story and just chewing it slowly and enjoying the flavor, as opposed to just like a microwave solution, like just putting popcorn and it's done.
Inaisha haraka. And traditional African stories usually carried issues that touched on morals, communal wisdom, matters to do with warnings. As a modern day storyteller, what do modern stories teach today's children? Is it ambition, empathy, or survival?
I think a combination of everything. And you're right. Traditionally, the stories were very big on community. And I wish you could still do that, because I think it's one thing we are losing as Kenyans, as Nairobians especially. You know, it's everybody for himself.
And God for us all.
I know. That's the reason why in Chapita town, you know, unapigwa and I'm like, ebu niende kabla wani. Kabla mimi nipigwe. I'm not like, okay, what can I do about it? And also very big in terms of integrity and honesty. If you look at the stories that we grew up with, even at school, things like Fumo Liongo, like Luanda Magere, the issues of honesty and integrity were really key. And let's accept that in the current society we are having, those are especially two things that community and integrity, we are really struggling with. So I hope, and I wish that we could actually do more of this. I believe that traditional stories from Kenya, from Africa, from around the world still have a very big space to play. I don't ascribe to this whole idea that the stories are kitambo. It's still a kitambo. What you have learned from the story is actually transcends time. If you're learning about community, I don't think there's ever a time community will come out of fashion. Integrity will never go out of fashion. Resilience in the face of whatever challenges you're facing, that is a skill that will take you everywhere. And I think that the way they're packaged in traditional stories, it cuts across then, now, and even tomorrow. What maybe we need to do is to package them to appeal to the audience of today, who will say, okay, I'm not going to sit 2 hours around the fire trying to get to listen to you getting to the point. Is how can we take the stories to the audiences as opposed to waiting for the audience to come and say, I know traditional stories work, so it's like saying, okay, where are they needed? And can storytellers who are telling stories in different ways, can you actually go and say, I am a storyteller, I know that you need this, and I know that I have a way that I can address it in my storytelling.
You know, every journey has its ups and downs. You cannot say that it has been a smooth sail in your journey as a storyteller. What can you say have been the biggest pain points in your journey as a storyteller?
Okay, interesting. So my background is theater and a bit of TV, like I mentioned. My very first show that I recorded was actually on KBC, Mnazilane, and it was interesting. For me, it was a big point because being on TV was a big thing. And also for years before then, I think that was around 2008. Before then, I have to say that even my family probably didn't even know what this woman is doing. Like you're acting. Unafanya kama kina mama Kayai. And that's what you want to do, you know? And I remember the first time I was on TV, and now my brother calling me and saying, oh, so this is what you do. So in a way, the understanding around what I do, and I think even after that, they would be like, okay, well, we don't really understand exactly what she's doing, but she's not asking us for money. That probably means she's doing a good thing. So for me, some of the biggest highlights have been to be able to tell stories in different places, to different audiences. So I can work with a kindergarten in the morning, I work with a family in the afternoon, and do a university or a conference in the evening. That is, for me, it's really key. And also that it combines things that I love. I love reading, I love listening to stories, and storytelling allows me to do exactly that. And I love traveling. So in terms of travel, I have been able to go to different countries here on the continent, Uganda, Tanzania, Somaliland, but also to other places in Europe and in Asia. So those have been and of course getting published. You know, my very first book is The Forever Tree.
This one.
Yes, and I remember when this book was published, the first year, it wasn't even about that I'm making money. It was like my name is on a book.
On a book.
Like that was like the biggest thing, and I really enjoyed that. But it has also not been smooth sailing. One of the reasons that I'm celebrating 20 years this year by doing a tour I'm calling Hadithi on the Move, and it is to take storytelling to the counties. And I have this ambitious plan to do 20 counties between January and December. It is because this is Kenya. We know how our creative industry is, assuming we even have an industry. Sometimes vitu zinagonga mwamba. You know, you do a gig once a month, you go 3 months without a proper gig. And you start asking yourself, hey, okay, kunaendaje? Uko sure bado unataka kuwa katika hii fani ya usanii? And I remember also like when I now went to college, because I got into theater immediately after high school. And I went to college, got my degree. And my family were like, oh, so now at least atacha hizo, you know, hizo vitu si serious, you know, because now you're proper adult.
Because it was not viewed as a career.
I know. And I also have to say, especially in my formative years, my first 10 years, at some point, I also thought, when things got tough, let me just go and look for a job.
Did I make a mistake?
Yeah, let me just go and look for a job. I know I love this, but maybe I should.
Yeah.
So that has been one of the challenges. And the reason I'm actually doing like Hadithi on the Move by going to the counties is to say thank you to my audiences and my readers in the different places. Because it is due to them that I've been around for the last 20 years. If it was not for them, it would not be happening.
You said Hadithi on the Move. You started in January.
Yes,
How many
Hadithi
counties
on the
have you
Move.
done so far?
So I've done 7 counties so far. We've done Kiambu, Nairobi, Kajiado, Makueni, Nanyuki, and Bungoma, and Nakuru. And then today in the afternoon, I'm actually going to be in Nyeri. So, and it's been great actually going there, because most of my work, by virtue of being based in Nairobi, is that I do most of my work in Nairobi and Kiambu. But it's been great going out there and meeting, you know, audiences, parents, children who say, oh, are you the Wangari who is on Big Minds? And I'm like, oh, okay, so you guys are actually watching this. Amazing. Or I go there and I say, you know, it's a Meet the Author session, and they come, they're like, we know these books, but we didn't know that you are the one who has written them. So it has actually been amazing, and I have a feeling that I might decide to do a bit more of county work even next year. Okay, but first let's finish the 20 this year. I would look forward to actually do a bit more work outside there, because it is important.
And finally, in future, if future generations were to inherit one story from us, what would that story be? What would you want this to leave behind?
Is that your voice counts. And I know a lot of times we delegate the storytelling, whether it is in written format, whether it's in the oral telling, to people who say, those are the storytellers. The media are the ones who tell stories. The writers are the ones who are telling stories. The filmmakers are the ones who are telling stories. But you should know that everybody has their own perspective. And your voice counts. And something else that I would actually love for us to do, because I feel like in the next 10 years or so, if you haven't done so already, we are losing a generation that has a lot of stories, both fiction and non-fiction. If you have grandparents or parents who lived through the fight for independence, what stories are you taking from them that you can share with the current and future generations? If you lived, if you know any pioneers who are doing amazing things over the years, a lot of times they retire and they just go home, but they're carrying so many stories. So I just hope that we could be able to record that and preserve it for future generations, and even for current generations, because I remember a few years ago, I was doing a show on the fight for independence in Kenya. And we did a show, it was for young people, mostly in their 20s. And someone came and said, you know, I have never thought about Dedan Kimathi as a person. Of course, I studied in school. I know he fought, you know, about the Mau Mau, the fight for independence. But in your story, you explained that he had a wife and children and what they went through during this particular period, simply because he was fighting for this. I have never thought of him as a real person who lived. And I was telling her, do you know that actually by then Kimathi's wife was still alive? And I remember her getting shocked and saying, but if she's still alive, it means that this whole thing you're talking about is not something that happened to our ancestors. It actually has happened to people who are still living today. So I think it is important for us to keep these stories alive and keep telling them in our own different voices.
I want you to do just a performance for us before we close. The floor is yours.
Okay, so which camera do I face?
This one.
All right, okay. So, if you were given a wish and you were told, choose one wish and it will come true, what would you wish for? Money? A soft life? I know I would love to have some soft life. I don't know, a big job, being employed in a permanent and pensionable job. Well, you should be aware, because you never know, it might happen as it happened to one man. Now, there was one man who lived with his wife. They were not rich. In fact, he made a living out of hunting. So every morning he would go out and he would hunt, and whatever he got, he would bring home, and they would slaughter and they would eat. For many, many years, he and his wife had wanted to have a baby. And they did everything that people say you should do when you want to have a baby. You know, they even prayed about it. But still, 5 years down the line, nothing seemed to be happening. And they also lived with his old mother, who for many, many years had already lost her sight. And this man really loved the mother. And so it happened that one day he set out and he went to hunt, like he always did. And as he was out in the forest, he saw a huge antelope. And he thought to himself, wow, if I catch this particular antelope, it will feed my family for quite a number of days. So he took his arrow and he shot. But just before he could release it, the antelope spoke. Oh, yes, it did. And he said, hey, hunter, please do not shoot me, because I am not any ordinary antelope. Please keep me alive. I also have children at home. And if I keep you alive, what will you do? What will I gain from it? My people at home are also waiting for something to eat. And the antelope said, well, I will give you one wish. Do you want to decide now, or do you want to go and consult? And the hunter said, all right, let me go and consult with my wife, and I will be back. So let's meet here in 3 days. And he went home. And of course, they began to talk and said, with the wife, I have one wish. What do I wish for? You know, I would love that my mother can see. But we can't live like this forever. I would want to have some soft life, you know, a good house, not having to worry about food every time. And I would love to have a baby. And of course, now discussing with the wife, and the mother is like, I would love to see. And the wife was like, hey, you know, me, I want to have children. And he was like, I want to have, you know, something good, a good living. And he slept the whole night. He was not even sleeping. He was just thinking and thinking and thinking. And that day was here. And he had to go back. And as he walked, he thought what he was going to do. Of course, you don't want to displease your wife. But also, you know, a mother gave birth to you, you know, akakulezo miaka zote. So what you do, and also, by the way, it is not bad to wish something for yourself. I think sometimes it's good to be a bit selfish. So he went, and he had an idea. And when the antelope presented itself, he said, well, have you decided what your one wish is? Can you guess what the man said?
Well, soft life.
Soft life.
Yes.
You say, whatever the mother thinks, the wife thinks, it's sour too, but this is me, and this is my wish anyway.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Well, he said, I would love that my mother gets to see my child sleeping in a golden cradle. Wow. And that is how the hunter got his 3 wishes fulfilled just by one wish and a lot of critical thinking.
That is interesting. I want to come and listen to your stories.
Great.
Yes.
Who knows? Catch me up in one of the counties that I'm going around to, or right here in Nairobi, and we can trade some more stories.
Yes. Asante sana.
Karibu.
Wangari, the storyteller. Indeed, the world is made of stories. Thank you for gracing us with your presence and just telling us about the aspect of storytelling right here.
Karibu sana. It was a pleasure.
Karibu sana. This is where this conversation ends. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Mike Migwe. Up next is Roll Call to the Weekend with Unique the DJ. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Semana Spokes from Ganagava.
Semana Spokes is the platform where Wananchi engage, query the government, and the government responds. It's your time to be informed. Don't miss Bonganagava every Thursday at 8 p.m. only on KBC Channel 1.
Semana Spokes.
Wewe wahitaji watatu ili kukamilika. Mimi nahitaji wawili.
Wewe pia? Hivi Pili alikuwa yazungumzia ukweli?
Ule. Wani?
Na anafanya nini pale na Patel?
Hata nina shaka.
Tusherekee kwa kuja kwa Sitara. My daughter. My daughter.
This show will celebrate your creativity, your talent, and all the fun things you love to do.
My name is Jordan Mwangi. I'm an ex-world scholar. My hobbies are playing basketball, playing football, and reading books.
And today's book is The Best Thing Ever.
Chinky chimpanzee stew chunky chocolate chips.
I'm Chef Zawadi, and today I'm going to show you how to make potato salad.
Vous présente un poème intitulé Le respect de la planète.